It is 6 p.m., so we'll go ahead and call the meeting of the Grand Forks School Board this Monday, March 31st to order. Our first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Flags are over here. Thank you. 1A is the reading of our school board meeting norms. Dr. Lund.
Norms are number 1, be prepared. Number 2, be on time. Number 3, value and respect each other. Number 4, exercise thoughtful deliberation and conversation. Number 5, be professional at the board table and when visiting the general public. Number 6, speak up when the norms are not being followed. And number 7, advocate on behalf of students and keep the community in mind.
Thank you. Just so everyone's aware, we have Dave Berger on the phone tonight. Item number 2 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I do have, or we all do have, one additional item at our tables that I would add as number 6E, if that is acceptable. 6E. There's a motion. Second by Bill. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote.
Flynn?
Yes.
Tomasino?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
And I'll switch that next time.
All right. Number 3 on our agenda tonight is celebrating success. We have Grand Forks Central High School team members here to present to us and provide us a presentation. I'll call on John Strandell to lead us off.
Good evening. Thank you, Vice President Anderson, Dr. Brenner, members of the board, executive cabinet. We are excited to be here tonight to tell our story. We will eventually get to some data and some goals, but I think we would like to begin talking just a little bit about Grand Forks Central High School and really who we are. We start off with a picture of our 139th graduating class. That is the group that will graduate on June 2nd. 139th graduating class. I'll say that again. So a big part of Grand Forks Central High School, of course, is the history of the school, dating back to 1882, our first graduating class in 1886. And this senior portrait on the front steps is one of those traditions I think that we cherish and students look forward to every year. But it isn't history and how long we've been around isn't all we are at Grand Forks Central High School. We have feeders from Valley, obviously, is the largest feeder school with all their students coming to Central. We get probably about 30% of our enrollment or 30% of an 8th grade class from Schrader Middle School comes to Central. We get all of Twining Middle School at Central High School. Manville, 8th graders come to Central High School. We get a handful of kids from South Middle School every year, and the same is true from Emerado. So if you add those up, that's 6 feeder schools into Grand Forks Central, coming from kind of a wide variety, at least a North Dakota wide variety of backgrounds, from the agricultural community of Manville to all across the world at Twining, from Schrader and South. Typically those are, if they're not within our neighborhoods, their parents, grandparents, maybe their whole family down the line went to Grand Forks Central High School. So we really feel like we get, like I said, kind of a North Dakota diverse feel from all of those kids coming together. It's a challenge to have that many feeder schools and get them to come to be in one school. I think that's one of our successes, is getting all of them to feel like they belong. And I think that'll be part of what you'll hear as part of our presentation this evening. So, who are we? Just a little bit about our demographics you can see up there. The majority of our students are typically underclassmen. The 9th grade class is 27% of our enrollment. And then the race and ethnicity up there, you see that most of our students are white, 65% of them. But the next largest group might be a surprise to some people. 14% of our students are Hispanic. 10% are Black, 7% Native American, and 3% Asian Americans. We have 1,045 students at Grand Forks Central High School today. Of those 1,045 students, 303, nearly a third of them, are taking an advanced dual credit or enriched course. You'll hear a little bit later this evening about the AVID program at Central High School. One of the goals of that program is to raise enrollments in those advanced courses. You can see the breakdown between AP courses, dual credit courses, and enrollments in other enriched and advanced courses at Central. In 2024, we had more national merit finalists than any other school in North Dakota. At this time, 20% of our students are on an IEP. That is the highest percentage in a Class A school in North Dakota. About 11% of our kids are on a 504. 149 of them receive support in some kind of class that's added to their schedule. According to ND Insights, 32% of our students would be qualified as low income. That is the third highest in the state, between one school with 36% and another with 33%. And maybe another fact that you weren't really all that aware of, we have a pretty high mobility rate. 32% of our students are either moving in or out of Grand Forks Central High School during their career. So I'm going to go back to what I identified as a challenge, is bringing all those kids in together from different middle schools and areas. This is another one, as new kids come in, to get them to feel part of the group, to feel welcomed, and maybe the fact that we have so many feeders makes those kids understand what it's like to be the new kid, because I think those kids that come in, there's some quotes that we'll share with you throughout the presentation, but I feel like we make those kids that come in feel welcome and part of the group as well at Central. Our staff, we've had quite a bit of turnover in staff in the last few years. As you can see from up there, almost 40% of our staff has been in education or at Central 5 years or less. That's a big chunk of who we are. I think when I came to Central, most of the teachers had been there their entire careers, or a good chunk of their careers, had been there a long time. So when that happens, we feel like we have a really good culture at Central High School. We feel like it has a family feel. We use that word a lot about family. But when you have that kind of turnover, there's always the concern about, do you hold on to that? Does that same feeling endure over time? And that's really incumbent upon us to make sure that that's how people feel when they come into the building, that they feel accepted and supported and part of a team, and really part of a pretty big and important piece of our culture, which is raising the next generation of learners to send them out into the world to hopefully succeed. As part of our presentation, we're going to transition, and I brought a team of wonderful folks with me here tonight. We're going to transition between topics, and when we do so, we're going to show a slide that has a quote from our senior survey. So at the end of our senior year in May, Dr. Dahl will talk a little bit about this survey. They're asked a number of questions, some of them open-ended, and one of the open-ended prompts are, what are two things that we could change at Grand Forks Central High School, and what are two things that you appreciate about Central High School? So I'll be the first transition. One student said this was a member of the last graduating class, the class of 2024, things they appreciate: tradition, caring for others, kind people, funny people, families of all sorts, grit, and history.
As Mr. Strandell mentioned, we're going to talk about the senior survey. So my name is Gabe Dahl. I'm an associate principal. At the end of the 4 years, we asked students to reflect on their journey and to give us some insights on their experience, the 4 years they spent at Central High School. The things that we focus on with them are on these topics: the classroom experience, the school climate, future plans. And as Mr. Strandell already mentioned, we asked two open-ended questions, and that's where we get the greatest amount of feedback. This is anonymous. All of our students answer it, and they are extremely honest, somewhat opinionated, but it's great because we know exactly how they feel. But there's way more positives than negative. They could say whatever they want, and they always say, gosh, if there's something I could improve, this is what it'd be on. But I love you're going to see some of the quotes that we see, that some of them are going to be funny, but there are a lot of insights as what they experienced over their 4 years at Central High School. So that gives you a little background onto what it is, but it's also we're going to look at how do students feel, because we have a sense of what it feels like to be at Central High School, but now you're going to get to see what the students are and how they feel when they're there. He mentioned that we come from multiple backgrounds, multiple feeder schools, multiple countries. We have students from all over the world. Yet, we know that students, in order to learn, they have to feel comfortable, they have to feel safe. So how do they feel at our campus? 91% of students say that teachers care about me, and 96.5% students would say that at least one teacher knew them really, really well. So again, knowing back to that, in order to be able to learn to do hard things, I got to feel comfortable. And they know that there's an adult that cares about them and will have their back at any moment. So that's when a student knows that they feel comfortable. It also gives us valuable insights about who we are teaching on a daily basis. I think this is a real telling tale about the kids that are at Central High School. And Katie's going to talk about this later, but we were going to have an avid student come and talk to us today, or talk to you guys and give us her avid experience. But unfortunately, she was not able to find someone to cover her shift. But this gives you an insight. Over the last 3 years, the seniors that have graduated from Central High School, 50% of them work at least 16 hours a day. So imagine you put that'd be amazing if it was 16 hours a day. I don't know when they'd go to school or sleep. 16 hours a week. So if you think about that, you're at school till 4 o'clock. Then on average, you go to work, then you have to do homework. That's a pretty long day. But again, you go back to hard workers, and then we also know I have a teacher that cares about me, so they can look at them and say, I know you're tired, but I'm going to challenge you still. And they're going to follow through with them because they know that teacher cares about them. So again, that teaches the climate, but it also tells us who we have in our classroom and who's are sitting in those seats every day. Not only that, this also tells you how they feel from certain aspects. So if you take a look at the top one, Mr. Wilbur and I don't always get to deliver the nicest things to students, but students will say that 90% of the time they felt like they were treated respectfully in a disciplinary background. So I think we look at that and say that's a pretty positive aspect. 86% of students say counselors treat them respectfully. 94% say teachers treat them respectfully, and the office staff. So students feel comfortable with us. And that's what we hang our hat on. Again, to do hard things, you have to feel welcome in an environment. So what I just looked at is, what does the end look like? Mike is going to talk about the temperature checks that are taken along the year.
So thanks, Gabe. So we've been given the Panorama Survey for the last couple of years. Started with it in the spring of 2022 kind of as a pilot, and then did it again in the spring of 2023. And then we're starting to actually get a little more aggressive in terms of the amount of surveys that we're giving. So we went from 1 to 2, and now actually we do a fall, a winter, and also a spring survey. We've just pulled some data out of this so you guys can kind of see some of the things that we are successful at, and maybe some growth areas too for us. So one of the things that we're pretty proud of, as you can see towards the top of the screen there, that supportive relationships one. 87% of the students that responded favorably, and that put us in the 80th to 99th percentile nationally compared to other high schools. So that's something that we feel really, really good about. And then the one below that is teacher-student relationships, and I thought that showed a pretty nice growth trend from the first time that we gave the survey at a 52% responding favorably, moving up to 61%. And there's some things that we're intentionally trying to do to improve some of those things. Another thing that we're pretty proud of is you look at overall safety and security within the confines of our school, and this is an area that we typically score very high with on students. And you can see on the left side of the screen some of the different questions and topics that are covered under that umbrella. But then also on the right side, you can kind of see the trend data in terms of how we've been doing. So you can see the last survey was 88% of the students within those categories responded favorably to the things that we have in place at Central, and that goes to a commitment that the district has made, obviously, with things like we have 111 HD cameras in our building, which is extremely helpful. Grant writing with the vape detectors that Gabe worked on in our bathrooms. the push-to-talk buttons to get into our facility. Having a phenomenal SRO who's behind me over here on the right side, who's been working in the building for a number of years and knows kids with the text-to-tip. So all those things factor in on, I think, that feeling of it being a safe place and a place that kids can, if they're having issues, they can come and talk to adults and we'll help them. An area of growth for us within the Panorama data is how much do you feel like you belong at your school? And the last one that we ran, about 49% of our students responded favorably to that. You can see it's down since the fall survey of this school year. So that was an area of growth that we've, you know, and how do you go about addressing that? And some of the stuff that we talk about, if you look at the bottom right up there, it's one of those Likert scale things that I'm not always a huge fan of. Is there's kind of a middle ground that kids can answer, and you can see that 32% of our kids responded with belong somewhat, and you know, it'd be nice to have them on one side or the other. And if you look at the total numbers that are up there, about 19% of our students were on the wrong side of that, or the not great side of that. And so that's something that we want to obviously work on. And one of the things that we're able to do with the Panorama survey is students have to put in their school IDs. And so if there's kids that aren't connecting to anybody in our building, our MTSS team, which we'll talk about later, can actually figure out who those students are and then try to be intentional to have one of their teachers check in on them and try to foster, I mean, in an authentic way. You know, this is a kid that's not connecting in our school and we're a little bit worried about that. Can you go and maybe just, you know, touch base with them, or you have a connection with them? Would you take a little bit extra time with them just to see if we can start gaining that connection and that relationship with the students? That's something that we're pretty intentional about. This is another quote from the senior survey before we transition to the next person. I appreciate everything the teachers do for me at GFC, and I feel like each time I walk through the doors, everyone is very welcoming. This person from class of 2022.
One of our goal areas, like other schools across the state of North Dakota, is related to the Choice Ready initiative that the state brought to us. I think you're fairly familiar with this structure and some of the measures that go into being Choice Ready. Really, the bottom line from the state is they want every student that graduates to have opportunities, to have choices, to be able to make decisions. And in order to do that, you have to have a certain amount of knowledge and skills that give you choices for how you're going to move in the future. So for us as a school, one of the strengths was workforce ready, which isn't really a surprise when we're seeing that we have kids that are in the workforce already. One challenge to Choice Ready and how it's reported is that we have a dashboard that students and parents can access to see their students' progress towards being Choice Ready. And so just real quickly, the blue oval at the top is essential skills, and you must master that section by having 4 indicators true of you in order to be Choice Ready. If you don't have the essential skills, it's not possible. If you do meet that standard of essential skills, then you need 2 of the 3 gold columns underneath that: post-secondary, workforce, or military ready. Okay, so for us under Workforce Ready, part of the challenge is much of the information is pulled from PowerSchool, but not all of it. Some of it is self-reported by students. For example, if you can see, it's pretty small print I can see, but workplace learning experience says 40 hours. So I tell kids, this is 40 hours of work from the time you entered 9th grade till your senior year. It's really almost impossible that you haven't worked 40 hours during this time, but they have to go in, access that, and record where they've worked, and they're not good about doing that. So we've really worked at getting there. Take that out, open it up, write down what you've put down, because we know that you've worked. So that is a strength of ours. However, the self-reporting piece becomes a challenge sometimes. What are our growth areas? One was military ready, and really that standard for military ready relies pretty heavily on your score on the ASVAB test. Really, we have to move beyond, I think, the perception that the ASVAB test means you're going to enter the military, and it really doesn't. It serves as a way for students to understand what do my skills, interests match up with in terms of a career choice. So we use it more as a career planning tool, And now that the state of North Dakota, the North Dakota Scholarship, which aligns really closely with the structure you see up there, but not completely, but having a passing score on the ASVAB as part of the North Dakota Scholarship, that becomes a carrot. Excuse me. In terms of that scholarship, we also had to overcome the idea that it's just for students who are attending a four-year school. That is not the case. It can be an apprenticeship, a trade school, a junior college, or the University of North Dakota, for example. So one of our worries there, or excuse me, one of our concerns there or challenges was really the perception of the ASVAB and getting students to understand its importance. So we bring in folks from the military, do proctor that test, and then once the results come back, they will come to school and explain to students what the results look like, what they mean for them. So that's becoming more of a culture at school for us because of those things. Other challenges for us post-secondary ready would be, and some of the things we've done in the past year accessing grants from the state of North Dakota is we're offering the ACT test at school. So that's no longer our state assessment, and that was always the practice to offer the ACT test. But being choice ready is heavily reliant on an ACT score. So having it at school removes a barrier for that test, including the cost, by the way. In addition to that, we've had students sign up for free ACT prep at school. We're paying for students to take their first dual credit courses through these grants for the state. So all of those kinds of activities, from taking a dual credit class, that means I'm closer to being post-secondary ready. So that's a goal area for us as well. In that essential skills box at the top, we have, one of them is a capstone project, really a culminating project, excuse me, that encapsulates your entire high school career. For us, we've taken our Grand Forks Central Portrait of a Graduate and made that part of the senior composition project. So all students in senior composition will do a reflective piece about where they're at in terms of the skills that are on the Grand Forks Central Portrait of a Graduate. So that's been helpful. Lastly, a goal area for us is extra and co-curricular activities. One of the reasons we kind of struggle in this area is because we have so many students who are working, so they're not able to be a part of these activities. Another one is, this is another one of those areas that is self-reported. So we struggle with kids going in there and actually updating their information. So we're working through that. All right, another quote. This is a response to two things that I appreciate about Central High School. The teachers, I'll greatly miss them, and the relationships I've developed with them, they've definitely helped me with who I am. Oh, it's me again. You lucky guys. All right. So I spoke a little bit about the Grand Forks Central Portrait of a Graduate. I think we're going to say 2019 is when we began talking about, a diploma represents somebody's acquisition of the knowledge and the standards that are required by the state. But in the end, knowing information, having all of those standards met, only means some piece of who you are. We were really concerned about who are these folks that we're sending out into the world, and really, what does the world need from them? That's where the idea of the Portrait of a Graduate came from, with a lot of help from Dr. Catherine Galach, actually, who kind of gave me the idea to investigate into this. The question we asked ourselves as a staff was, what does it mean to be a Grand Forks Central graduate, right? Who are the graduates that we have, and what are their skills, their habits of mind that they possess as they move out into the world? And then additionally, what is it that the city, the state, the region, our country, or the world needs from the next generation? And then how can we contribute to those needs? So, how do you decide what all those skills and attributes are? We decided to ask folks. So we sent out surveys to Grand Forks businesses and industries, to parents, to Central alumni, and then to post-secondary institutions, and asked them, from each of your unique lenses, what is it that you need? What do you think that young people should, what kind of people should they be, right? So in addition to knowing things, what kind of people should they be? That was a big piece of it. So we took all of their responses, and there were a lot, and organized them into themes, and those themes then became the Portrait of a Graduate. So this graphic, one of the fun things about this project has been the student involvement in it. This graphic was produced by one of our students in graphic arts class, a member of the class of 2022. So we had given her the skills and attributes and the themes that we kind of came up with. So wellness, for example, has 5 attributes underneath it, and you can see self-directed, active citizen, effective communicator, and ethical and humane citizen. We spend time each year not only educating our freshmen about what each of these things mean, and we do that because our dual credit speech students and our video production students get together to create videos that are informational and help explain the portrait. And so we just actually had this year's students make the second version of these videos, kind of updating them a little bit. But this really becomes the framework of who we want these kids to be. And if you take a look at those skills, I don't think we're missing anything. We'll continually take a look at this and reflect upon it to see, is this still relevant to what the world needs today? But I look at some of those things and think, gosh, if adults all had those skills, we'd be in a pretty good spot right now. So it's a lofty goal, but I think having the students dig into each of them and see what they would mean to them, and then, of course, start to assess their own progress towards the portrait, it's pretty important work for us at Central High School. I'm kind of hogging the mic. I could use some water, actually. All right. Next for me is talking a little bit more about our goals, but here's another quote. First of all, I'm just kidding, Gabe. You do not need to get me any water. I knew he would do it. I just knew he would do it. So 2 things you feel you appreciate about Grand Forks Central High School. Again, the feeling of welcome and safety. Teachers and staff want you to be there. Also, the effort for connection that teachers and other staff make to get to know students and to help them succeed. A member of the class of 2022. Our Be Legendary goals, right? The academic goals we have at Central High School, as you know by now, are either in the area of English language arts or math. We are taking the North Dakota State Assessment. NDA Plus is the platform here in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So it's the first time we've interacted with this platform. We've not used, there are potential opportunities to use the same platform for your interim tests. Our district uses the STAR test. So it will be our first time students have logged in and used this test. So we'll have to see what that looks like and get a better idea of the test itself and look forward to the results after we've done that. We're really focused on monitoring our progress based upon the STAR test that I just talked to you about as far as our progress monitoring. So you can see the benchmarks they're not huge leaps in terms of a goal. We're looking to go from 48% at or above the benchmark to 49% this year in the STAR test in the spring. So in doing that, it really makes it the goal of our team to take a look at jumping up a percentile point. What does that mean? In what areas? What are our deficits and what are our strengths? So we examine ACT data as well as past state assessment data and STAR data to come up with our goals and really our action plan. So this is the action plan for literacy at Grand Forks Central High School. The first one says that students will access nonfiction text and media to increase their background knowledge. We talk a lot about how generationally the students' experience is just different, right, than what we've had. I sat down with the family at supper. We watched the news every night, right? That was just part of what we did. So when I came to school, terms were familiar to me, right? The teacher would talk about things. I had some ability to reflect upon my own experience, and that isn't happening as much anymore, particularly when kids aren't home and they're working, like we see so many of them at Central. So we feel like that's a big piece of this. We have to, their knowledge needs to be increased, and how do we do that? We mostly think it's through informational text, but it's not limited to text. It could be a podcast, it could be a video, but really just to increase that background knowledge. As part of our AVID work, one of the strategies we used is called Focus Notes. You might hear a little bit more about that in the future tonight. but that really requires students to be taking in information, recording it, organizing it, processing it, working with a partner to collaborate to make sure they're understanding squares with what it should be. So it's pretty active in terms of taking in that information. So that's goal number one. The second one was that students read these articles and text to determine the main idea. Oddly enough, I can give students text or even a graph and have them pull out information and they can recall it. I can ask them a specific question about, let's say, I always use this example, what does wheat production look like in Russia in this year? And they'll find the information, they'll be able to understand what it means. But if I say, let's take the entire text, this entire article about economics in Europe, can you tell me what the main idea is? And that is where their struggle comes in. So as part of our focus notes that I referred to, we have them mark the text to be able to develop evidence so that they can support, they start to figure out by looking at the evidence to go, what is this article saying to me? And then they can also start to look at who's the author, and because each of us come in with our own perspective, what is the perspective of that author and what do they bring in terms of bias? And not that bias is a bad thing, that that's just a natural part of life. The third goal is a focus on guaranteed vocabulary. Again, we're going back to not having background knowledge and how vocabulary really is the key to understanding not only what is being said, but also what is expected of you. This is big on assessments. When students are asked, let's say, to hypothesize something, and then they wonder, I'm not sure what hypothesize means, right? The last one is we decided we probably need to apply a number to the requirement for nonfiction in classes. In so many classes, let's say social study, are going to say, all we do is read text or take in information, and it's all background information, so we're just doing it. There are other courses where that's not the case, and we're asking them to start to bring in opportunities to look at the Grand Forks Herald, Avid weekly articles. We get free versions of the New York Times, take in information and practice all these skills we have as part of our literacy action plan. Shoot, am I really done?
I think so.
Okay.
Everyone's so much taller than me. Okay. Hi, I'm Katie Arthur. You're going to learn about the many hats that I wear today. One of those is the data steward for Grand Forks Central. So I get to share some of the data with you when it comes to monitoring our Be Legendary goals. So this is the STAR reading proficiency rate. Our monitoring goal is in the spring of 2025, we will be at 49% proficient or advanced. And as you can see, we are, as of our last date in the winter, 46.4. So we're about 2.5 percentage points away from meeting our goal. You can kind of see the trend there. We started last fall. Typically, STAR scores in the winter typically dip, and that's what we are seeing this year. Last year, we didn't see that. And when we take a look at our math data, we will not see that either. But in years prior, our scores dip in the winter and come back up in the winter or in the spring. So the STAR assessment, as we use that for a monitoring goal, it's an adaptive test. And so what that means is when students are taking the test, they get an answer correct, the test will go one way then. If you get an answer incorrect, the test will go a different path. So in this data that we have here, there's a standard that aligns with our goal when students read articles or text to determine the main idea. The standard that some students might come across is listed there, but not all students will be assessed on it. It depends on their adaptive way throughout their assessment. So you can see that those who were assessed in that standard, we increased 5 percentage points in the secure area, which is the proficient, with our 9th graders. The 10th graders increased with 2%, and then we kind of were steady with our 11th graders. Similar data with this other standard. Again, it's an adaptive test, so those who came across the standard on summarizing and paraphrasing nonfiction texts, you can see we were up 6% with our 9th graders. We dropped with our sophomores, and we're up 3 percentage points with our juniors. So this is all good data to share and look at when we are making informed decisions with our goals and what our goals should be when monitoring our Be Legendary goals. So this is an interesting report. This is, I have to paraphrase this. This is, or preface this with, this is a district benchmark distribution. All of the other data is state benchmark, and what that means is the state kind of sets the benchmark with those reports. This one, our district sets the benchmark, so it's not comparable. What really tells us about this, though, is if you look on the right-hand side with the number of students, so 273 of our ninth graders took this assessment, and of those 273, 192 of them were here in fifth grade and also took the assessment. So you can see the mobility there of about 80 students that were not here now, that were here in, or that are taking the test now. So this is the 5-year longitudinal report. What it really tells us that if our students are here, they do well. Our teachers work hard to help close those gaps when they do come. It's if they are not in mobile, it's hard to address the gaps and close the gaps. 10th grade is very similar numbers. 200 out of the 245 sophomores, 191 of them were in the Grand Forks Public Schools 5 years ago that also took the assessment. Same with our juniors, 256 juniors, 203 of them were here in 7th grade, the longitudinal 5-year report. And you can see the proficiency rates, again, as our district benchmark sets are positive when students are here. This is one of our favorite pictures of Corporal Kaiser. His name's going to come up a few times, and I know he's in the back there. This is at the Cushman Classic, getting the student section all riled up. But a graduate from 2022 says, "I appreciate how committed the school is to creating a sense of family and inclusion. You can tell that the teachers are only looking out for what's best for you and want to help you achieve your goals." Okay.
I have the opportunity to work with our math department, and as Mr. Strandell mentioned, we're looking at a 1% increase in English, but we're also looking at a 1% increase in math. So as you can see, in math, we're looking at 33 to 34% as measured by the NDA plus. And then from the STAR assessment, we're looking to go at 56 to 57% as measured by STAR data. So you can see that. So what really happened next is probably the important thing, going to the math department and really digging into how do we get from 56 to 57 or 33 to 34? Math people will look to see, okay, how can we make this be cross-curricular? And what I mean by that is, when we look at a goal like this, how do we ensure that it's the entire school that is working on this and not just the math department? So when they look at their data, they look to see how can each department buy into this and look to see how they can help that. So that's what the math people really focused on when looking at their data, is how can other departments use this to make Grand Forks Central a better place. Ultimately came to this. Students will analyze scenarios, graphs, data sets, and diagrams to come to reasonable conclusions. So we think about it, if I'm doing a math problem, and I'm going to speak to math at this point, if I come to an answer, is my answer reasonable? Does it make sense? So when I said we work 16 hours a day, was that a reasonable answer? No, that wasn't a reasonable statement that I made, so I was forced to come back to it. But if you think about that, when you come to something, is something reasonable? That's what we want students to be able to do in all aspects of school. Look back on something, does my answer make sense? Then making sense out of a graph, a data set, a diagram, a scenario and chart, that can grow cross-curricular, and you can find that in every content area, and all people are then working towards that common goal. So that's why this was a key, and this is the main, and this was important to us. It also, going back to the literacy, what is the main idea? Who's providing the information? What is the bias? But asking the question, does this information make sense? We always want people to go back, does this information make sense in what I'm reading?
More data to support that goal. As you can see, our monitoring goals in the spring of 2025, GFC will be at 57% proficient or advanced, and you can see our winter STAR scores are already proving that. So we're hoping to maintain that number and continue to grow, although you can see the trend from last year where we were up in the winter and came back down in the spring. So we're continuing to hope that we stay above that 57% proficient. So again, the adaptive test, not all students will come across this standard. In fact, our Sophomore class is assessed on geometry standards, and only our 9th grade and 11th grade are assessed on algebra. So this standard came across in those 2 grade levels, and if that came across their test, you can see in 9th grade, we were down a percentage point in secure, but we did move more students from beginning to developing, and then also our juniors were up 3% growth.
Go ahead.
So I know we haven't administered the NDA Plus yet. And so I'm wondering if part of the percentage of like the 33 to 34 is just a shot in the dark of like what will come out of. But how do you explain to the lay public, like when we come to school board meetings or report data and they say, well, how come this test has a X proficiency, but this test has a X proficiency, and they're, 20 percentage points different potentially. How do we help fix it? And I know things are new and stuff, but I think that would be helpful for the board too, just academic wise.
You know what, I think that's part of a larger discussion in terms of like, what's the assessment model or vehicle that we're going to be using moving forward? There's been a ton of changes in the last 5 years in terms of what we've been doing at the high school level, right? STAR wasn't something that was anything that we used 3 years ago. And so we got STAR going, knowing that NDA Plus, which is the state assessment, is also kind of lurking in the background. And both NDA Plus and STAR count at the state level as an interim assessment. All right, NDA Plus is the only one that counts as a summative assessment, and just know that we're continually working with the district office and people out here on what's the best path forward for us. The hard part is we went down the path of STAR knowing that NDA Plus was probably going to become a reality, and there were some benefits to doing that, specifically the longitudinal data that was provided, because STAR testing has been going on forever for kids in the elementary and middle schools, right? So now we have at the high school too, so you can track a kid all the way through their schooling experience, so that's a positive, okay? But the other side of it is, and I'm the one that does all the assessments, right? So I'm the one that has to send the emails out to all the teachers every time we're doing it, and it's hard because we're taking classroom time away from them, right? And so we're trying to be strategic in terms of how many times we're disrupting the classroom experience for those testing opportunities. But I'm with you. I would like something that is a little bit clearer for us in terms of, are we going to go with STAR? Are we going to go to NDA Plus? Looks like the trajectory is probably heading towards NDA Plus, but we've committed to STAR and we've been there for the last couple of years. So I don't know if we're just going to throw that away either. So I'm sorry I don't have like a real great answer for you yet. And we know it is a little bit messy, but I think that's just part of that process that we go through as we're adding these things in. Go ahead, Catherine, if you wanted to add something.
No, it was very well articulated, Mike. On top of that, there have been some correlative studies that the STAR is a decent predictor of performance on the NDA or in the former North Dakota assessment. We don't know what those correlations are with the new assessment that's coming up. So we're kind of we're in the transition mode right now. So valid question. It was a predictor at one point, and now we are not sure yet. So we'll find out if we switch course or not again.
Sure. I appreciate that answer. I mean, I think my biggest fear is when we talk about this in public, that people might see, well, you guys were at 55 and now you went to 33, and they just maybe won't delineate. So we know what interim and summative probably means, but I think when we talk about that, using language and words that are probably a little more watered down would help. What does that mean? What is a summative? Is it the whole year? Is it, because I think then we can start to really help the public understand, like, these aren't two of the same tests. We didn't administer one in the winter and one in the spring, and our numbers went down. And, especially as we are seeing some really great progression, and the schools are really involved in the collection of data, but really what do we do with helping, students achieve better progression? I just want to make sure that we're trying to be as clear as muddy as possible. So I appreciate that. I mean, it helps us understand and more to come, I guess.
Any other questions? Nope. Dr. Dahl, you have some questions from board members? Okay.
Katie alluded this earlier when she was talking from the English portion of this, that this is the benchmark that is set forth by the district. So as we look at this, there's two major themes that pop out to us when we look at this information. The first theme tells us that when we have students that are with us from 5th grade all the way to 9th grade that have the consistent of the same curriculum moving through that they do a really, really good job. As you can see, as the vast majority of them are in the green. So it tells us two out of every 3, or 66% of them, are at or above the 50th percentile. So, but then it also gives us a little insight that we go back to what is our mobility rate, okay? If our mobility rate is hovering around 33%, that brings us to where are the rest of them, okay? So we know that that's something that the second theme is our mobility. How do we improve on that? And what I mean by that is if a student comes into us from our district, how do we identify what are their gaps? How do we catch them up? And how do we bring them so we can meet that at that point? You're going to hear more from us later about things that we are talking about to help students like this. Mr. Strandell's talked a little bit, and Katie have already talked about the MTSS process. That's going to be a major part of coming up at the end of this, but that is how we help students to identify what are their gaps and how do we bring them up to a place where they can be successful, because as you know, we have students that have gaps and we need to bring them to the level. So that's going to be the major theme of each one of these. As you can see, it's the mobility rate, but this one is at 68%. And this one's at 71%. So again, we're going back to that consistency. When we have students that are with us for those 5-year trends, we do really well with them. But it's again, how do we catch up the other students? And that's something that we're really digging into and systematizing. How do we help our students that are maybe struggling learners through our MTSS process? So, a quote from the class of 2021. How Central looks to push their students to be the best versions of themselves.
I'm not sure what hat this fits under for me, but the third Be Legendary goal is our Native American graduation rate, and our goal to increase Native American on-time graduation rates from 65% in the spring of 2023 to 74% in the spring of 2028, as measured by North Dakota DPI. So some of the things that we have been doing is our administrators and counselors sit down and generated a list of all of our Native American students within our building. We are doing periodic checks to check their progress to see where they're at when it comes to finding success and graduating on time. Some of the things that we've been doing is we've had a great partnership with Derek Sporbert and through TRIO. He's been just incredible with providing mentors from the TRIO program to come in and be Native American mentors. Our goal with that is to promote a connectedness to school, help increase our attendance, provide mentorship, celebrate culture, and ultimately increase our graduation rates. So some of the things we do at these lunches is all Native American students are invited. TRIO provides lunch for us, and students are welcome to come down during their lunch. They do some culture activities, such as the last one is people who created this virtual reality powwow game came in and shared with us how that works. It was very interesting. We've done smudging practice. We have did some artwork with our beads, like beading activity. We've had a great turnout. 25 to 40 students, I would say, come to our lunches, and they would be once every other month. One of the cool things is the connection that these mentors provide for our students. They really, truly, I feel, see themselves within students who are achieving their doctorate degree at UND through TRIO, or being in an athletic sport, or just being a contributing member of society. I mean, the connectedness to these have been something that students look forward to. Students stop all the time in the hallway and say, when is the next lunch? When are we going to get together again? When are they coming back? As far as our data goes, or our stats, the rate in 2024 of last year was 70%. Currently, this year's seniors, we are on track with 15 out of 16 of our Native American students are currently on track to graduate. And then our junior class, 9 out of 13 are currently on track. Here are some pictures of that. One of the cool things too, it just shows one of the many great things about Corporal Kaiser is he had developed such great relationships with students in our building. I wish we could keep him forever. I hope he hears me. The students had invited him to come and share in their culture experience and their celebrating success at the end of last year. So that's a picture there. You can see the lunches happening. You can see Mr. Strandell serving lunch, and then some of our students who are working on their art and craft project. A graduate from 2021. This is maybe one of our favorite quotes. You guys didn't kick me out. You probably should have, but hey, look at me graduating. I learned how to have pride in my school, community, and what I do.
So Amber, you're kind of jumping maybe a little bit ahead of us in terms of like the data that we look at. You know, here's something, well, I'll just ask this group and just show me, raise of hands. How many of you guys remember taking the ACT? Just raise your hand. Okay. Now, without saying what the score was, how many of you guys remember what your score was? Okay. So this is something that's been around for a long time. And so when I started at Central in 2020, I had the privilege of basically trying to run that for the school and getting that all set up logistically. And a couple of years ago, this is something that the public generally can understand, right? If I throw out an ACT score, they can look at it. And one of the neat things at the time when I came into Central in 2020 is that it was the state assessment. So you could actually compare large high schools across the state and how are we doing. And so, you know, I don't know if I need to hit it with the laser pointer or not, but if you go top left to the top right, you can see where Grand Forks Central is, and something you guys should be proud of and our community should be proud of is you can see Red River High School and Central High School are in the top 10 consistently, and actually in 2021 and 2022 in the top 5. And so that was something that we were pretty proud of when you do a state comparison. The issue with it is in 2022, it was no longer the state assessment, so we started seeing some of the larger Class A schools going away from it. So if you look at the bottom of that far right data set, you'll see that Minot and Jamestown didn't participate in 2022. And so what I thought is I would grab some national averages just to see how we compare with our peers across the nation. So last year, it was actually, they had the lowest ACT score that they've had in 30 years. There was 1.4 million kids that took the test. It was about 34% of the graduating class took it. But you can actually see, and I apologize, it doesn't lay out real nicely, but that bottom right graph will have Grand Forks Central's scores for 2022 at the bottom at 20.9, and then 2023-24 at 19.6. And if you looked over on the left side, then that will give you the year's national average, and you can see both years we were actually above the national average in terms of trend data for the ACT. So just something that, like I said, or Amber, you were kind of getting at, something that people can look at and see how the schools are performing in comparison to other individuals that are out there. So another quote for you guys, class of 2022, every one of the staff that I have conversations with are always wanting to have those conversations with me and are engaged. Central's core values are encouraging and help every single student become a better person.
So another one of my hats is I am the AVID district coordinator. So I'm proud to say that Central is one of the 5 AVID schools that we have in our district. So that's 50% of my job is the AVID district coordinator. The other 50% you'll hear at the end of our presentation. But there's 2 components of AVID. There's AVID, well, first of all, AVID stands for Advancement Via Individual Determination. You'll hear a couple more acronyms that we'll define for you. But there's 2 components of AVID. There's AVID school-wide, and then there's AVID elective class, which Becca Lord will talk more about the AVID elective class. Everything that AVID has to do with the College and Career Readiness Framework, you can see, is very closely aligned to their mission, and that mission is to close the opportunity gap to prepare all students to be college and career readiness in our society. When we first started AVID, this is year 3, maybe year 4, year 3 or 4-ish. The reason why we started so strong, in my opinion, is that we had a really strong vision, mission, which is our portrait of a graduate. If we didn't have that vision and that belief in all students, AVID would not be where it is at today in our building. It is thriving in our building. Those 4 domains are what drives some of our decision-making, our instruction. We really worked hard this year is to define rigor. What does rigor mean? And then how can we raise the level of rigor through WICR, professional development, and WICR stands for Writing, Inquiry, Collaboration, Organization, and Reading. And those are the foundational strategies that help raise the level of rigor within our classrooms. And then we had a strong emphasis on organization. Becca Lord is coming up next. She's our instructional coach, and she is the AVID elective 10th grade classroom teacher, and she's going to share about our systems and our culture.
So as Katie had mentioned, there are kind of two components to Avid Secondary, with the school-wide components and then the Avid elective. Talking now a little bit about our Avid elective. So for the past 2 years, I've had the pleasure of serving as one of the Avid elective teachers at Grand Forks Central. If you look in the bottom left portion of the text over there, you can see our Avid elective class progression and how we have built our structure to incorporate the Avid elective class. So last year, in 2023-2024, we had 2 sections of the 9th grade elective. I taught one of those, and then the other one was taught by Mr. Casey Beck. This year, 24-25, we have 2 sections at 9th grade, still taught by Casey, and then I have the 2 sections at 10th grade. Next year, we'll have 2 at 11th, 2 at 10th, 2 at 9th, and then in the 2026-2027 school year, we'll full reach implementation with all 4 grade levels having 2 sections each, and that'll compose roughly 120 students at that time. So we got some pictures from our classes up there. The students who are part of the Avid elective are very intentionally recruited. They're kids who show academic potential, whether or not they fully achieve that or able to achieve it in this moment, or if they'll get there eventually. That's kind of what they're all about. They're kids who have big dreams, but they have some pretty substantial barriers getting in the way of sometimes achieving all of those dreams. And this class is really about teaching them how to push through those obstacles when things get hard, giving them the skills, giving them all the things they will need to be able to be choice ready. We've talked about that a lot here today, and that's a large component of this class. So within the class itself, we follow the curriculum as written out by Avid, which incorporates a large number of Wicker strategies. We also have some time to go to visit campuses of local colleges and universities. We bring in guest speakers so that our students can hear from a variety of people with different career paths, what it took for them to get there, what they do in those roles now so that they can plan ahead, dream big, and start figuring out what they need to do to follow those dreams. Also, those 2 pictures kind of in the middle, you've seen a lot of these actually kind of sprinkled throughout, whether you noticed it or not, with the whiteboards there. 2 days every week, we have something called tutorials. And with that tutorial process, it's actually a very complicated, hard to master process, but the way it works, our students come with a point of confusion from any of their other academic classes. They bring it in, they get into small groups of about 4 to 5 students, and through some very intentional, guided questioning within their group of students, they help work through their points of confusion. So I get to kind of sit back, they get to ask one another, they get to teach one another without just being directive and telling them what to do. They learn through inquiry and collaboration, as those are some pretty big components of Avid. Also, in addition to that, we get to do some really good team building things to, again, build our collaboration, communication skills throughout our time together throughout the week. It's not an easy class by any means. It is a difficult class, but it is all about teaching these kids the skills they'll need to succeed moving forward. So kind of along the same lines as Katie, I have a number of different roles at Central. I'm the instructional coach. I do teach 2 sections of the Avid elective, and then I'm also our Avid site coordinator. So with that, I can kind of go back to the school-wide stuff. So Katie had already mentioned that within the instruction portion of the Avid framework, organization has been a pretty big emphasis for us at Central, largely because of how well that aligns with everything we're doing with the Portrait of a Graduate. So last year, we brought back planners for every student, and this year, to promote their usage, we were able to get little rewards donated by various businesses in our community like Shields, Rydell's, Deeks, Albatross, Splashers. I'm gonna forget a few, I shouldn't have named that many. And then so once a month, Gabe, Katie, and myself, we select a random class, go in, just do a little audit of how people are using their planners, and those who are consistently using their planners receive whatever the prize is for that particular round. It's a great way to celebrate responsibility, planner usage, and then just also, it's a good data point for us as we're looking at things that we're doing towards our building goals. This all relates to another section within the Avid framework, thinking about culture. So this year we began implementing college and career wear Wednesdays. And additionally, I didn't put them up here, I should have, but we also have little door signs outside of all the classrooms now that show the colleges and universities that each of our teachers have attended, the degrees that they have earned. And though those might seem like small things, just like wearing a UND sweatshirt and having those little signs, it really is intended to promote the conversation and keep kids wondering and dreaming big for the colleges and careers that they have in their future. So Katie and I believe John, maybe everybody, has alluded to the fact that AVID is really kind of a foundational portion of how we do professional learning at Grand Forks Central. So on our February PD Day, you can see some of our AVID elective kids who came in. The theme of that day was really just leveling up. And so those kids brought in their binders, brought in all of their focus notes. They were able to share how they have learned to take focus notes, how they have learned to apply that learning to their other classes to make their learning deeper, and just all the other strategies that they have learned through the AVID elective and how those have kind of supported them across the board. I do think it is super worth noting that this was the first thing that we did on that day off from school. So not only did these kids come in on a day off from school, they came in at 8:15 in the morning. So that is something that I feel like we can totally celebrate. And they did a great job. They were so well spoken. I think I might be a little bit biased. I am biased, but they did a great job. I think it was the highlight of the day. They represented themselves so well. They represented the program so well. It was just a proud mama moment for sure. And again, it was mentioned earlier, we wanted to have one of those students come in, but she's working tonight, so she was not able to do so. So really just all of this wrapping up with the AVID portion of our little conversation tonight. AVID is really all about opportunity and preparation. It empowers students with skills and the mindsets that they need to navigate their futures, no matter their challenges. And it's so exciting to see even more students coming into the program and getting access to AVID stuff throughout the district as they gain confidence and readiness for all that's ahead. Oh, I get a quote. Another thing that our students are loving, the genuine love from the teachers and the students when they first moved here, class of 2021.
I'll just make this one quick because I know Mr. Strandell and Dr. Chris Harrison already prepped you guys on the attendance portion of what we're doing at the high school level. This came out of the Vital Network survey that the state was initiating with districts around North Dakota. You know, this is something we put a lot of effort into, and we have our students classified as Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, or Tier 4. Basically at Tier 1, you've missed 6 class periods, and this is the Q3 data. We look at this every 9 weeks to see how we're doing. And so individuals that are in the Tier 1 would have missed 6 class periods of at least one class. And then Tier 2, they would have missed 10 class periods of at least one class. Tier 1, they get a text when that happens. Tier 2, social worker actually calls home to see how they're doing, what's going on, how can we help. Tier 3, it would be an individual who's missed at least 12 class periods of at least one class. That's when Gabe and I get initiated and we do attendance contracts, call home, check on the family, see what's going on. And then Tier 4 is when they've missed 18 class periods of at least one class, and at that point they're dropped from the class. And then if there's an online curriculum that we use called Ingenuity, and we're not trying to put too much on a kid's plate, but we'll go up to 2 classes to replace the class that they've missed. And again, that came from a Vital Network survey that was done, and looking at, you know, and you can see it with our data, and we have phenomenal teachers at Grand Forks Central High School, and that was one of the things that was really burning them out, was trying to you know, deal with the attendance issues that we were having at school, and catching kids up that have been gone for 3 or 4 days, and then they're back for a day or 2, and then they're gone again for 5 days. So this is a real intentional effort that our entire school has taken on, and hopefully Joe can speak to it a little bit at some point in time, but also I think other teachers that I've spoken to, they've been very appreciative of the work that the people that are involved in the attendance policy have put in. Okay.
Okay, the other 50% of my job is Director of Interventions at Grand Forks Central, which just basically means I help with a collaborative approach to help students find the best path in our building. So over the last few years, have developed and created so many different pathways. I think 2 years ago when we were here, we shared about our School Within a School program. And That, and along with our Edgenuity, along with SAIL, along with our modified classes, you can see all of the different tiers of support that we have. So we knew we needed to formalize a system and a collaborative approach to make sure that we were consistent with which pathways students are fitting into, and then where we can meet them where they're at, and then continue to help them be successful, put them in the best path towards success to graduate from Grand Forks Central High School. You've heard so many different data pieces that we use to collect, and data does drive our decision-making. So that's a part of our MTSS meetings. We meet every week. Who's on that team that meets is our counselors, our administrators, our social workers, our school psychologist, our Corporal Kaiser, and myself. And so we dedicate time every week to meet and address any of the MTSS referrals that come in from our staff to see what barriers are in the way and how we can collaboratively come up with a way to remove those barriers so students find success. Did I miss anything, guys? Okay. I think that's it.
Do you have any questions for us?
Questions or comments from board members or other? Maybe I'll go to Dave on the phone first, if he has any questions or comments.
No questions. Appreciate the reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Others, questions, comments? Jay?
There is a reference to rigor and how you define it. There is a question about rigor and how you defined it. How did you define it?
Just in simple terms, I would say rigor means we're leading students to increasingly more complex levels of understanding. So it's deeper learning is really what it's all about. We're not just learning terms, but comparing and contrasting, describing, right?
Thanks.
Yep, you bet. Good question.
Others? Sherry?
In the beginning, I might have missed it, but first of all, thank you. Great presentation, great data. You talked about the surveys for the students that they were asking those questions. Are those state surveys generated, or they're generated by all of you?
Yep.
And so do those surveys ever change?
We do look at them periodically and adjust the questions. It's also nice to have that longitudinal piece of, some of those questions are pretty timeless, giving us the same information that we would like to know. I think it's just more of a reflective piece, that there's no process involved in that, if that's what you're asking. It's not a real standardized process to update it.
Okay,
The senior, so you're talking about the senior survey, correct?
yes.
Yeah, senior survey is what you're talking about.
Where all these quotes came from
Yes, yep,
and such.
exactly, yep.
It does ask how they learn best, and then it asks where they spend most of their time learning in classes. So that also gives us a reference, okay, how are students learning, and is that how they're really being taught in classes, and try to mix those and make sure that we're doing the right thing by the end.
Yeah.
And so every student takes
Every senior, it's like the
Senior.
second to last week of school.
senior?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Other questions from board members or others? Amber? Adriana, do you have something?
I was just going to say that I really appreciate you guys acknowledging that, so many students at Central have jobs, outside of school. And, they work on the weekends, they work on weekdays, and it's so many people. I barely know anybody that doesn't have a job, to be honest.
Right, yep.
And it's just, I really appreciate that because, as a student who has a job, it's nice to be seen like that. And so that it just, it piles up, Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. Amber, did you have something?
I always ask this question, so I'm not biased, because Central, has a dear place in my heart. But if we could give you a wish, or you had your own wish list and unlimited pot of money, what would you want the board to know that would be beneficial for day-to-day at Central that you could utilize some additional resources for?
Wow. When we met with local legislators last fall to talk about the attendance issues, I think we outlined to them a lot of responsibility for a child that were at one time taken care of by juvenile probation, social services. A lot of those things have gone away in the last few years, and I think their answer to the question of, well, who's going to take care of this? They will say, we'll let the schools do that. That's a lot of pressure and work for probably roles we haven't had in the past, and still trying to fulfill our educational mission with meeting those other needs that families have with the same staff, right? It hasn't really changed. That would be one. Some more parking would be nice, maybe some athletic fields. Those would be nice too if you have a big checkbook. I don't know how many checks you have or how much money's in there, but those would all be great.
Thank you. Other board member or other questions, comments? Dr. Brenner?
Just a comment. First of all, thank you. Thanks for your presentation this evening. And I have the opportunity to periodically stop at Central High School. And, you know, we've talked about some of our new building projects and what that is going to be able to do for learning environments. But what you and your team on all 4 levels have been able to do with a building that's well over 100 years old is just fascinating. The benefit of your building being stacked the way it is, and how all of you are present in the corridors all the time, and your teachers are, is you know who your kids are. And I feel that, and I see it, and I hear it every time I'm having a hallway conversation with the 2 of you or the 3 of you, the admin, and we're visiting, and students are walking by, and you know all of your kids. And so while your staff has flipped, you know, to more of the novice level group, your culture has not. And it's a great place to be, and I just commend you for continuing with onward at Central in your culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brenner. Appreciate it.
Thank you. One last chance. Anything further from board members? Other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, thank you for the time tonight. Thank you for the presentation. We certainly appreciate it and highlighting all there is to celebrate at Central High School.
Thank you all. Sorry we went a little longer than we were. We've tried to be efficient. Thank you.
Item 4 on our agenda is our public comment period. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to convene into the public comment period of our meeting. Although state law does not require us to hold the public comment period, we have chosen to do so because we believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues. Having said that, please note the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designated or designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns and questions now. This is because we take your concerns and questions seriously and want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will, however, respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have proper staff get back to you at the appropriate time. I also want to point out that under state law, state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel. Please know, however, that we take personnel concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask that you go through the appropriate administrative channels. Finally, we recognize that our nation and our community are polarized on a number of issues. That said, we want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students, those members of our school board and members of our community, that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. We ask that speakers address their comments to the board directly. Finally, I also want to remind everyone that you may submit written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period if you so choose. The board will now entertain public comments. I have one comment card for an individual. Each individual speaker is allotted up to 3 minutes. At this time, I have a comment card for Ashlyn, sorry if I'm going to mispronounce it, Ashlyn Demarius. Could you please approach the microphone?
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering if you guys were aware that there's bullying going on in your guys' in the school system's Gmail system in public Power School, or not Power School, but Classroom, Google Classroom. And it's not just happening like at one school. It's happening at a lot of, like, all the schools, because my daughter is one of them. And she's been receiving emails from students at her school and also from South Middle School. This has been an issue since last year. I brought it to the attention of the principal, and they said they were going to deactivate her Gmail account so she couldn't see those. But it's happening still, and it's not deactivated, because I saw it this weekend also. And I'm just worried for other students out there, not just mine, but other students also. And then I also have another question. What is your proper procedure for filing a compulsory attendance complaint?
As I stated, this isn't meant to be a question and answer, but I would direct you to your, the proper building administrator for your student to get that question answered.
I can't get it answered at the school? Is there somebody else that I could speak with? You? Okay. Okay.
I'll follow up with you on both of those items.
Okay.
Miss.
I also have
And
some other
Catherine.
questions. Maybe I can talk with you about those too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 5 on our agenda, superintendent's recommendations for discussion. There are no items for discussion. And moving on to item 6, superintendent's recommendations for action. 6A is the consent agenda. Dr. Lunn moves approval. Sherry seconds. Are there any questions? We'll hold a roll call agenda, or a roll call vote, I'm sorry.
Hodak,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Manley,
Yes.
Clevin,
Yes.
Berger,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Palmesino,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. 6B is the general fund financial statement. I will turn this over to Brandon.
Chair Anderson, members of the board, I have for your consideration here, general fund financial statement for the first 8 months of fiscal year 25. At the highest level, it's showing that our revenues are 84.5 million, while our expenditures are about 72 million, resulting in our revenues over expenditures of about 12.4 million. The first report here is how it's performed so far through February. The actuals against the actual budget here. So at the top sheet of that first report, you can see a summary. And really, it's much that same story of those state dollars have come in on the revenue side. Local and federal sources are also coming in. The local sources are lagging just a little bit, which I'll explain to you on the second report provided. And then also in that same summary is just right around that middle of 50% is in the salaries, fringe benefits, and utilities, put us right where we'd expect us to be at this point in the year. The other expenses actually have been down quite a little bit down. They're about 52% coming along in the year. So we're watching that, and that's a favorable report. The second one, which is the comparison report, is helpful to compare at this point in time with the year prior. You can see what has really changed. And you'll see those local sources on the revenue are showing down 6%, or about $800,000. Really, what I point out in this is actually relevant to the primary residence tax credit. And the positive story there is the way that tax credit works is that was something that the state was giving back to our taxpayers, $500 per primary residence. This has come out, but we're expecting the county will be made whole by the state, actually, I believe last Friday, and it will show up in our next April financial report. So it's just a mechanism thing related to that tax credit. Just wanted to point that out. I made a few other notes here, but again, you can see that when you look at that expenditures on the summary sheet, they're down quite a bit from the year prior. This is showing almost 37% down. You'll have to remember that there were still some ESSER dollars in the system when you compare year over year, but it's still very positive too, and hopeful for the budget. Just lastly, you see that graphical depiction, revenues, expenditures in the last 3 slides. The last one, the general fund balance, you can see some of those colors converging to a similar point. I wanted to point that out. I've talked about that throughout this year. A lot of times we'll have federal expenditures and we'll seek the reimbursement. So with those lagging dollars and the impact of ESSER coming off, the green bar really shot up and it made us look even in a more beneficial position. But it actually is coming out that they'll converge near this February and March, which is the point where at this point last year, the federal reimbursements would have come in. So I just wanted to offer all those comments to you. On the first page of the cover memo, the administrative recommendations to approve the general fund financial statement for the period of July 1, 24 through February 28, 2025. Happy to stand for any questions on anything I've said or anything that's in the report.
Any questions from board members for Brandon? Dave, do you have any on the phone?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Any others? If no questions, the administrative recommendation is for approval. Bill makes a motion, second by Jeff. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Palmesino,
Yes.
Berger,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Manley,
Yes.
Levin,
Yes.
Hodak,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. Item 6C on the agenda is policy review. I will turn that over to Dr. Lund.
If we were in a classroom, they'd probably have to separate Paul Messino and I, but we're not in a classroom, but we might get separated anyway. So it's in your packet. These are the second readings for these 7 policies, and nothing has changed from the first reading. And I would make a motion that we approve those 7 for their second reading and adoption.
There's a motion for approval of the 7 policies in the memorandum. Is there a second from Jay? Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote.
Larson,
Yes.
Palmesino,
Yes.
Levin,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Manley,
Yes.
Berger,
Yes.
Hodak,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. 6D is the Finance Committee report. I chaired the last meeting, so I will just provide that the Finance Committee did, as shown in minutes, meet on March 24th and discussed the following 2 items. Item number 1, consideration of the bid results related to safety and security enhancements at Kelly. We have with us Brandon Bombach to walk us through this, along with Jonathan Elwine and Chad Dustin from Construction Engineers. Should we have any questions for them, I'll turn it over to Brandon.
Yes, thank you. Members of the board, as mentioned, 2 items here. Just take it the first and second. There are some action items associated with those. So firstly, Chad had come and made a presentation on the bid results for safety and security enhancements for Kelly. The scope of that project is largely an interior remodel. There's a very small bump out on the east side of the road right on Cherry. And the estimate of the construction GMP prior to the bid was $725,000. It came in at $727,905, so awfully close on that. That's the construction component. There are some soft costs associated with that project, and that's how you get to the total project amount of $862,567. The Finance Committee heard a full presentation on that and did recommend approval to this body to accept the GMP of $727,905 for those safety and security improvements for Kelly. We didn't have any prepared comment from the guys there, but as you know, they're available for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions, Dr. Lund?
Just a quick question for Chad, maybe more than anybody, and this is a unanswerable question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. From a construction standpoint, with all the stuff that's going on with our government and our world and the tariffs and all that, it seems like right now we haven't seen a big inflationary bump about this. Are we anticipating that may happen down the road because we're not done with all of our improvements? And I realize it's kind of an unanswerable question, but I want to give you a shot at it anyway.
Yeah, thank you. We are seeing some, mostly related to any steel, which luckily we don't have a whole lot on some of these projects. We are getting some tariff-related increased notifications from some of our subcontractors, specifically like specialty subcontractors that supply like bathroom specialties, grab bars, things like that. A lot of that stuff is imported. But generally, we haven't seen any increases on any projects that we have to date, minus some minor structural steel increases for things like lintels and smaller items that we've got. But a lot of that is why we carry construction contingency as well, too, in case any of those come up. We have dollars set aside to account for that, not a separate line item for tariff-related increases. But as we get into the projects, we're having that conversation with the bidders and whatnot, too, so. Yep.
Any other questions from board members in the room? Dave, any questions on the phone?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have a motion to approve. Second motion is by Dr. Lund, second by Jay. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Levin?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Thomasino?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
For item, 6D2, consideration of building fund use for Lewis and Clark Intercom. I'll turn it back to Brandon.
Yes, thank you. The main crux of this question coming to the body is that according to North Dakota Century Code, if you use the building fund at all, it must be explicitly given permission from the board. And so this has a little less to do with actual permission to do the activity, but is to use the building fund dollars for this project. But as noted in the cover memo, there was a recent failure of the intercom system at Lewis and Clark. Obviously, that's a key safety and security component to that building. And Jonathan had worked with Johnson Controls to put together a scope of work here. We didn't bid that work because it doesn't exceed the thresholds, and we're actually, we do a lot of work with Johnson Controls. They have a lot of proprietary products within the building, so that's the obvious option we went to. The scope of work here was just $33,630, but there's a little bit of 10% contingency built in there as well. So you can see that the Finance Committee discussed this and ultimately recommended approval to use the building fund in the amount of $36,933.85 or up to fix that intercom system at Lewis and Clark. Anything more to add?
I just wanted to make the comment that generally I would bring these requests directly to the board. We brought it to the Finance Committee really just to give our contractors some the ability to start moving the project forward. You know, it was such a vital thing that we wanted to make sure that they felt confident enough to begin this process. So I'll stand for any other questions as well.
Any other questions from board members? Amber?
There's a small typo in the 10% contingency, so I'll make a motion for approval with the change of the 10% being $3,336.
Or perhaps $3,363?
Yeah.
Thank you for catching that.
$3,363, yeah, there's an extra 3 there.
So you're making a motion to approve still the total of 36,000. Is it still the same total?
Yeah, the total doesn't change, it's just that
Yep, there's an extra 3 there.
10% contingency is not 33,000.
Correct. Yep. Okay. Motion. We have a second from Bill. Any further questions or discussion? Dr. Hodak?
So it's started already, the work? And how soon will it be finished? Because I would say that this is a concern that needs to get handled ASP.
Yeah, the equipment is ordered. We don't have an ETA yet, but it was ordered 2 weeks ago. So as soon as I figure out when it's going to get here, we will have someone on site to install that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, we do have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and take a roll call vote.
Manley?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Tomasino?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, 6E. This is the item at your board table, teacher resignation. I will turn this over to Dr. Brenner.
Thank you, Chair Anderson, for the opportunity. As Mr. Anderson indicated, the subject matter is teacher resignation and waiving of liquidated damages. I will just go ahead and read the memo, so it's straightforward. Mariah Hehai has resigned her position as kindergarten teacher at Nathan F. Twining Elementary and Middle School, effective March 28, 2025. Due to circumstances and reasons remaining undisclosed, the administrative recommendation is to accept Ms. Hehai's resignation and to waive the liquidated damages associated with her resignation. And you can see her letter is attached. We would seek board approval. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Dr. Brenner? Questions? Seeing none, the administrative recommendation is for approval of the resignation and waiving of the liquidated damages. Moved by Jay, second by Joel. Any further questions? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Berger?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Tomasino?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. Item number 7 on the agenda, 7A, is announcements. Any announcements tonight? Seeing none, we'll move to 7B, board requests for future consideration. Any board requests for future consideration? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on from 7B to 7C. How did we do on school board meeting norms, Dr. Lund?
I would be a teacher favorite because I would give it A+ tonight, so.
Thank you. We will adjourn and take a 5-minute break and then go right into our Facilities Committee of the Whole meeting. So we'll take a 5-minute break to allow reset. And so we'll start that at about 7:38 approximately. So with that, we are adjourned.